Alright YouTube, what's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So there's a lot of reasons we make up to buy a watch, and some are valid and others are just complete BS. And today I'm going to discuss those reasons that are just total BS. And I'm doing this because my ultimate goal here today is to give you guys some food for thought. That way you save money and you are able to spend that elsewhere or save it. So before we get into this video, wrist check real quick. I'm wearing my Rolex Datejust. This has not gotten the amount of wrist time it deserves lately, so I threw it on the wrist for the weekend and yeah, spending some time with it, giving it some attention. So with that being said, the first bad reason for buying a new watch is because you're bored. You are restless, you're scrolling Chrono24 and you come across a listing and you naively think that buying another watch is going to inject some excitement back into this hobby. But in the end, what you're really doing is you're not reinvigorating your interest in watches, you're actually just turning the hobby into retail therapy, which is not a good path to go down. And you're going to be left wondering why you just blew your rent money on a watch you won't wear that much anyway. If the only reason that you're buying a watch is because you get bored on a Sunday night, you don't really want to watch, you actually just want some excitement. So with that being said, I would recommend that you go out and do something cool while you're wearing the watches that you already own. You know, go hiking, go swimming with your watch, go to a fancy restaurant and dress up, whatever floats your boat, right? Just don't confuse consumerism with emotional fulfillment. The next bad reason for buying a watch is going to be the fear of missing out. You know, people look at hype watches, they look at social media, and they get stuck on wait lists at the AD, and generally people don't like being left behind, so they panic buy watches that they didn't actually want or connect with in the first place, and they end up collecting dust as soon as the hype dies down. So I have two personal stories regarding this. When the Omega Moons watch was released, I found it to be a pretty cool concept, but the lack of availability kind of just turned me off to the entire idea of owning one. And the idea of spending almost $300, if not more, for a plastic quartz watch was to me kind of insulting. You know, if you remove the hype from the Moonswatch, it's just a really low quality product that is designed to funnel you up into the ecosystem of the Swatch Group. And if I wanted another watch from the Swatch Group that badly, I would just save a bit more and, you know, buy something of higher quality like a Hamilton. The next example that I have is going to be the GMT Master 2 BLRO, more commonly known as the Pepsi. I have no complaints about that watch, and I think it's a beautiful piece in my opinion, but the gray market price for it is absolutely insane and purely hype driven. And buying it as an investment piece from the AD does not really make sense to me, because one, I don't like to sell my watches when I like them, and I also wear my watches too. I wear my watches day in and day out. If you look at this Datejust right here, you can see that there's a reasonable amount of scratches on it that have definitely hurt the value retention of this watch. And, you know, to me, I'm indifferent about that because, at the end of the day, I do not want to ever sell this piece. But with that being said, I'm not into watches for investment value. I'm into watches because I like them. That's the reason I bring that up. I like to wear my watches, and wearing watches, surprise, surprise, causes wear to the watch, which in turn tanks the resale value. Lastly, there is a GMT that I want more than that, one that I would rather continue to save money for and you know, delay gratification on. In the meantime, I'm content with what I have, and I think that all of you watching this should be too. Don't let the fear of missing out get the better of you. The next bad reason, rather, to buy a watch is to impress other people. This is inspired by Adrian Barker, and he really does have a point here.
Now, a lot of people buy watches to, I guess, try and elevate themselves, perhaps to get a little bit of status from the brand in which they're buying into. Perhaps with the idea that someone might notice their watch and think a certain thing about them. One, that status thing isn't real, because you can buy a watch on finance, and therefore you showing that you have an element of wealth, it it doesn't really happen. Equally, no one's going to notice your watch. No one's going to give a shit about what watch is on your wrist. The only person that cares is going to...
Watch collecting is extremely tangled up in image and status projection. It is adjacent to those two concepts. The problem with attempting to project status with a watch is that people who don't care about watches won't notice what you have on your wrist. And people who do care will know that you're probably putting up a front. You'll essentially be owning a watch for others and not yourself. Buying watches to impress people is like getting a tattoo or something to impress your accountant. They don't care, and it's a permanent mark on your image. You'll be looked at as the tryhard, and that's not something that you can easily shake off. The next reason for buying a watch that I think is poor is chasing an identity. And this is a big one. I had a former friend who would constantly trash every watch brand except for Omega because he thought that that brand had the best specifications in the game. In his mind, he needed his Seamaster Planet Ocean because he needed to ensure that that watch would be water resistant whenever he was swimming off the coast of Coronado with his HK 416 doing an underwater submarine raid or something. The problem with that whole notion is that he's not a Navy SEAL doing training swims off the coast of NAS Coronado. He is an unpaid intern with a bachelor's in political science. He's never served in the military. He's never done anything like remotely close to military service in his life. So this whole idea of him like taking his 416 underwater and strapping on some dive fins to his feet while he has his Planet Ocean on his wrist is a complete fantasy. In a previous video, I roasted Omega guys because they like to imitate James Bond. And honestly, this guy was the real life inspiration for that bit. Like, people seem to think that a certain watch will magically transform them into a version of themselves that they want to be. They think that buying a Seamaster will make them an MI6 case officer, or that a Submariner will make them, Jacques Cousteau, or that an Audemars Piguet will make them a world-famous rapper. But newsflash real quick, buying something like that, or buying a Vacheron, will not make you old money or cool or a special operator or whatever. It just means that you have that watch. Coming from old money makes you old money. Having an Omega does not make you a spy. Passing a selection does. Watches, in general, can reflect who we are, but they don't impart value onto us as human beings. I hope that distinction makes sense. Watches reflect who we are because they can be emblematic of the values that we hold dear. But they do not impart anything intrinsic onto us. They do not change who we are. You don't buy an Omega one day and then the next day you wake up with a trident on your chest, if you catch my meaning. If you're buying a watch to become someone, you're just going to end up disappointed, flat out. And the last reason to buy a watch that I think is a mistake or rather misguided, is that it's a good deal. You see the watch in the case, or you see that listing on Chrono24, and it looks interesting enough, but then you look at the price. It's discounted, and it's too good to pass up. And you're not sure that you're going to find another example of that reference in the same condition at that same price. So you think that you're going to regret it if you pass up on it this time. In my mind, this is a bit of a toxic mentality to have, because buying something just for the fact that it's been discounted usually means that you've never wanted it enough to begin with. Now, I should make a distinction here that if there is a certain watch that you've been hunting after for a very long time, and like you find it in the condition that you want it to be in, you find it at the price point you want it to be at, if you can afford it, then hey, whatever, sure, jump on it, right? But don't mistake that for buying something on an impulse just because it's discounted. That is a terrible reason to buy a watch, let alone anything else. You will make a serious financial mistake by doing that, especially if you cannot afford it outright. If you can't afford it at its full price, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to buy it on a discount. All the watch is going to do is clutter your collection, and it's going to drain funds that you could have used on something better or more prudent, like investments or saving for a house or something like that. bottom line, right? If you bought a watch for $5 grand that normally retails for $6, the fact is that you didn't save $1,000. You simply spent $5,000, and that's just simple math. But with that being said, I hope that this video has given you guys some food for thought and has given you guys something to think about before you decide to go forward with that purchase that you may have been considering. And if there's anything I missed in the comments, let me know down below, and let me know your thoughts on this video. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching, and take care. I'll see you in the next one.